Hello and welcome to the Business and Banking Dialogue Show, your daily one-stop show for the best of best in topics of financial world and subject matter experts who bring these topics across to you. So in this 1 hour show, we present to you some topical subject which is of the financial world. We are live across EPS channels, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thank you for participating in today's show. I'm KK, your host and moderator for today's show. Ladies and gentlemen, today our topic is on QR codes. Okay, all of you have seen QR codes, and some of you are using it. But the relevance of QR codes is right now the most important one, because it has suddenly, because of the COVID situation, the QR codes have got a lot of prominence. So QR code seems to be appearing everywhere, correct? I mean, you go to the malls, you'll find it on products, any wallet payments, paintings, magazines, T-shirts, whatever you buy, products or groceries also. Any finished product, you will find that there is a QR code attached to that. Marketeers and advertisers have caught on to the unique marketing opportunities presented by QR codes. And with COVID and handling cash becoming an issue, QR codes are in demand. With the coronavirus wreaking havoc, QR code powered solutions have come to our rescue. Some of them which are already there, and a lot more are coming. For China has used QR codes to filter visitors at checkpoints. It's a contactless filter of people who come into the airports. They are able to check through them. Singapore is using QR codes to ensure contactless visitor entry and to facilitate community-driven contact tracing. So that's how they do the tracing, because it's not that you get into Singapore, you completely disappear. No, you will still be traced out. Across the globe, QR codes are being used in contactless pickup and, almost importantly, contactless payments. Given the increase in demand for a safe way to keep consumers engaged, the QR code market is expected to see a massive surge. There's lots of things happening on the QR codes, and you will find that the usage of QR codes by you and me is going to surge much more in the days to come. To discuss on the return of QR code based payment, we have with us today Mr. Mahesh Ramamoorthy. He has been our guest in our earlier shows. So Mahesh is a regional managing director for Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa, banking solutions of FIS. So he has come, like I said, he has come to our show earlier. So right in front of you, we have his profile. It is, you can see the years of experience that he has got. And typically in the payment side, he has been he's been a kind of a veteran, if I may say so, with lots of years of experience. So good afternoon, Mahesh, and welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, sir. Really appreciate your time here and the opportunity provided. Fantastic. Good to be back.
Thank you, and we are happy that you are here. We could talk, on a subject of payment, and today is QR code. So Mahesh, let us begin by telling our audience, by giving an overview of QR code based payments in India. Mahesh?
Sorry, your network was a bit bad, okay. So maybe if you could.
I'll do that. So what I was saying, that we want to bring all our audience who are across so many social channels to bring them all our audience on an even plate. Can you give a view of QR based payments in India, how they work, where are they used, how are they used, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been so I think the initial, if you look at it, QR has been, like you rightly said, QR code has been in existence for a while. The utilization of QR code obviously has morphed itself. Now, earlier it was predominantly from a marketing perspective, from the opportunity to initiate certain data points, like for example, whether it is in stores or the malls that you talked about. I think those were initial usages. Now getting into payments, I think with I think the major jump I would see in QR code was with respect to the how the time of demonetization, when a couple of private players really jumped onto the opportunity from a closed loop perspective to launch a QR code based ecosystem, which is essentially in terms of the acquiring side and as well as issuing side within their own world. That really helped because at the end of the day, there was a huge opportunity where the acceptances started, the opportunity for people to get familiar with QR codes, and more importantly, extending it to the kirana stores or the person on the street who's selling goods to you. So, however, I think NPCI and the government really have jumped onto the bandwagon along with the card brands, which is Visa, MasterCard. So I think NPCI launched after that the Bharat QR and now UPI QR. So all of these have essentially started to consolidate its positions. It's still a long way to go, I would say. But the very fact that now you see wherever some of the good shops that you land up and you see the ability for you to use Bharat QR embedded into some of and the reading of that embedded into a lot of the apps that are there by some of the big banks are enabling you to make payments. So I would say that the QR codes in India, I would say we still not tap the full potential. We probably are at the tip of the iceberg. In my opinion, I think we've just started the journey. There is a huge opportunity for us in India to extend the QR code approach, take some of the big use cases that may come about, and we'll probably touch upon as we go further into this conversation. But I would say that we've just started in terms of payments, very specific to our topic. We've just embarked on that journey with QR, with UPI now becoming fairly well accepted, Bharat QR now being integrated, and eventually a lot of convergence expected, and interoperability being far more accepted. I think in those propositions, I would say that we would have, we should see a fair bit of growth. It's just the start, and the pandemic is only giving us, we as technologists and the market, a great opportunity for us to leverage and move further.
Thank you. So, as you heard from Mahesh, it's we are using QR codes, for many of our payments. If you are using typically any of the wallet payments, you do use QR codes often, if not the phone number. But according to Mahesh, it is just the tip of the iceberg. This is what we're saying. Just a startup in India. So there's a significant amount of upsurge that you will see in the days to come. And I think the UPI and Bharat Pay QR will help. And if they bring in the interoperability, I think that convergence will help. And that will give a big fillip to the QR-based payments in India. So Mahesh, you spoke about increased popularity of some of the QR based, and one of them is the closed loop based payments after demonetization. So you did talk about some of the fintechs taking this opportunity and jumping into the bandwagon of QR based payments. What were the reasons that have led to the accelerated adoption of QR based payments, code based payments?
I would say, see, if you look at QR code, it is a very low cost, and it enables any acquiring merchant to be able to set up his or her infrastructure pretty much at next to nothing, next to zero value he or she is able to set up. Now, and that really helps. So you don't, if you look at it, merchant, once he or she can download the app, generate the QR, take a print and stick it on the static QR, as long as you have an account, as long as you have passed the KYC that is required, you're pretty much ready to go. You don't need to start doing the large investments that you need to do from a perspective of physical point of sale devices, the legwork that is required to maintain it. All those aspects don't exist. There are some limitations, but effectively that's fairly overcome with the simplicity that is associated with it. Having said that, today, the far-reaching impact of such proliferation of QR codes, I would say, has caught on well. And today, as you start to cover the a very large segment of the merchant population, and we've still not covered a lot of the population. The tier 1, tier 2 cities are not benchmarks to it. Effectively, there is far more you need to extend across the 3 and 4, where cash is still the primary modes of transport. So if you are able to convert the acceptances much more to the QR, make it much more simpler, easier, and much more user-friendly. To me, I think that is going to be a phenomenal change that one's going to witness. Now, to me, obviously, that the accelerated adoption comes from 2 parts. One is, as I talked about, the simplicity, and 2, in today's world of pandemic, there is always a risk that has been called out in terms of carrying physical cash, contacts, physical touch. So this allows you to do all your transactions in the ease of your own comfort, of your own mobile phone. So if you see, there is also a health angle to it, which really helps. So it's not just from a technology enablement perspective, it is about the ease of maintenance. It is about the health part of the story, which is essentially now in everyone's mind. So I would say that these 3 are driving factors. And now I also see a real push to drive the interoperability much more rigorously than where it was. If that happens, is it a fair ask to replace a lot of the point of sale terminals? Eventually, yes, to a large. Not everyone can afford it, and the maintenance is also low. The usage would be predominantly for all the low value purchases that you may do. And we can talk about number of use cases that are emerging and which are already being enforced. So to me, yes, this has now become, I call it the resurgence, and hence it's a very appropriate shift, I would say, point in time when one should see that particular shift happening from here onwards.
Okay. So you emphasized on interoperability, and that's the, I think, the basic cornerstone of any payment system going across India. Now, when you talk about interoperability, are we talking about just between 2, 3 or 3 apps or companies, or also having a standard coding system for all the companies, such that it's one standard for India? Is that something of that sort being thought about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the way I look at it, KK sir, is 2 things. One is we already have the QR code standards that have been published by the NPCI, which is one of our leading bodies driving the payment innovations and acceptances. I think India should learn a bit or 2 from what Indonesia has done recently, earlier this year. Yes. And they have, in fact, forced some of these standards. Now, when you look at the Indonesian QRIS, I think it's a very good position that they have taken to essentially convert cash to digital, and through a very, very easy mode of this thing, build in the right security framework, build in the acceptance criteria. So to me, as we move along, the interoperability is more going to be defined by how well the folks who really bring this to the table are able to regulate it, mandate it, give the necessary platform for it to be interoperable. And then have everyone essentially start using it, because these are all underlying built on standards of EMVCo. So as you start to build upon it and extend it, I think there is a huge opportunity there. And leveraging on some things that, leveraging some of the knowledge, I would say the challenges faced, so from some of our partner nations, is going to be a success factor for us. We've been good in UPI, we've gone leaps and bounds on it. Can we leverage something like this to probably further it? Is going to be the success factor for us.
Yeah. So I think, I hope, ladies and gentlemen, you're appreciating the interoperability aspect of it. You must have seen those QR codes, but then they are currently of a particular fintech company. And so if the idea is that any of this QR code should be accessible by any of the any of the payment mode that you want to have. So let's say if you have let's say a Google Pay and you see a QR code, it should be able to just take it. It doesn't matter whose company's QR code that is. And that kind of interoperability will bring a lot of convenience to the customers. So Mahesh, we talked about some use cases, right? So can you tell us to our audience, can you tell us what are the fast emerging use cases of QR code based payments in India?
KK sir, if you look at it today, what's being used? What is it being used at? It is today being used for micro payments, whether it is at the vegetable vendor, the local shops. It's being used for some of the some form of payments at some of the grocery stores. It's being used for some other forms of purchases. It is being used in campuses, some of the campuses for closed loop kind of an approach with an open loop interface. But effectively, you do have those capabilities available today. I would say that some of the good use cases that will emerge is in terms of transit. If you look at where cash is today extensively used is transit, whether it is in terms of toll, whether in terms of bus transit, whether it is in terms of your train, converting it into a very quick QR code based ticketing and transit is going to really change the game for us, because today a lot of the cities, and predominantly the tier 1 cities as well as some of the tier 2 cities, hugely depend on transport. Or if someone is on a bike and someone doesn't have the tag, ETC tag and everything, today you have to stand in line. So no, forget about the last for 3 months, 4 months, but eventually traffic will come back on the road. So to be able to avoid cash and be able to use your dynamically generated QR code at the toll booths to be able to pay and just zip across, these are things that I believe will start to emerge. So bus ticketing, whether it is in terms of how you get into a VST bus, can you use a QR code based payments to change the game? We'll have to work through. The acquiring infrastructure need to be enabled well to create the dynamic nature of that. But yes, having said that, if one does it and puts the right kind of investments, there is going to be a sea change in terms of how you're going to make it work. You don't need to carry your physical card, be very careful of someone flicking your purse and your phone. How do you really manage this? I think you're going to see some very interesting use cases emerging. How does this essentially travel itself from a technology perspective to other use cases that may emerge, whether it is in terms of combining with a loyalty option, combining in terms of cashless insurance, hospitalization. Can you combine a lot more business use cases with the payment use cases? I think there are quite a few in every field that you go with. We've been today probably only looking at it with a very siloed face, a siloed view. But if you look at it with a slightly step back and look at how you can broadly use it to a much more bigger canvas, I think we can name 4 or 5. Transit being the big game changer, being in terms of your, in terms of beyond marketing, in terms of shopping, and in terms of loyalty, disbursement at the point of QR acceptances. I think, and more importantly, getting into predominantly still we do push payments. If you get into pull payments where the merchant is able to generate the QR code dynamically with all the data, that will make a significant shift, because then the amount of data, the information that is gathered is far more than today basis is static. So I think these are some top of the mind use cases that I can come across. But yeah, I mean, you just name it, every field you can probably innovate, and you can create plugins into your whatever applications or your business processes to be able to make it. And I'm not talking about business processes itself. When you talk of operational, like whether it is, you are, let's take a case in point where you're paying someone, right? You're paying, for someone who's doing in a manufacturing shop, he or she is able to, is on the conveyor lines checking a few things. Now, you could link payments of an individual basis on the number of checks that he or she has done. So very simple, a lot of use cases that you could start to link. And so I would say that you start to think, you can just list about 8 or 9. Then you have to see where do you really make the shift, and where do you really can make the difference, and then work on it, and where do you make the return on investments to the whole thing.
Yeah. Thank you. You said that we can like you said about transit, and you said that even if you lose your wallet or if you lose your phone, but I think phone is important, right? Without a phone, can you, or is there any other way you can make these payments?
See, right now we're looking at phone because that's the only media that is with you, right?
Right.
But tomorrow, I'm sure that if as things get more intelligent with you, whether things can get into wearables, it can go into as long as the readability from the wearables happens eventually. Now, today wearables are purely how do you combine some of those readability factors, right? Accessibility factors will emerge. I would say today we are still looking at very mobile being the way to read the QR. But the moment you have that capability moving to smaller devices that you carry or you wear from a digital perspective, those become they become your ability to pay, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't limit it, but yes, you would see far more applications emerging soon.
Okay. Thanks. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you're finding this discussion interesting, because this is the way India is moving, and this is the way the world is also moving. Typically, the Southeast Asia region and Asia, the QR code is getting a lot of prominence. It is increasing, its usability is increasing in leaps and bounds, and you will see that in India too, it will be used for many things. Okay. For even when you buy your simple vegetables, sabzi wala, he will have a code, and just about, you will be able to pay with whatever you have. You may have a smartphone, you may have an app, you may have something else, but it'll be so easy to pay off, and that's coming. That's a reality. That's going to happen very soon. So I urge you to kind of put in your questions early today, because I'm going to wind up a little early because Mahesh has some other commitments. So I'm going to wind up this show a little early, maybe 10 minutes to 4. I will wind it up. So please put in your questions right now in the Q&A box. If you want to ask a question directly to Mahesh, please feel free to put up your hand, and the digital team will enable you to to kind of get you across and ask the question. So while I'm saying so, there is already a lot of interest, and I have a question to you, Mahesh. Pushpendra Khandelwal asks a question: Is there any single app which can be used for all QR codes? I think we talked about it here, but I think maybe you need to explain a bit.
Well, not yet, to be precise, and that's where the interoperability plays a game.
Yes.
So I would say there are apps today which read about most of the open loop conditions. Yes, there are most of the apps pick it up, but when it is open and closed loop coming together, I think that's where the challenge arises. So to me, I think to be able to make it as simple as how you do a card payment today on a point of sale machine is, if you're going to bring that, the interoperability aspect has to be addressed. And it is being addressed. It's just that it is not yet there at every endpoint and every recipient part of the story. So to me, yes, the evolution is still a game. It's not yet there. So you should probably wait for the next 12 months to make sure that everything will be done. Otherwise, people are going to lose the game.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's definitely, a lot of fintech companies I'm also aware are working on a single app which will span across.
It's a super app.
Yeah, it's a super app, right? A super app will come, and so hopefully we'll see that very soon. So I continue to have discussion, and like I said, please send in your questions as early as possible, because I'm going to wind up the show about maybe 10 to 4. I will wind it up. Well, What is your assessment of the opportunities for QR code-based payments, Mahesh? And what are the potential challenges that we may have to overcome to increase the penetration of QR code-based payments?
Yeah, see, like I said, KK sir, the potential in every field exists. Now, what's more important is what is the government and the acquiring system, the acquiring ecosystem going to enable it.
Yeah.
Which means, like, let's take a case in point. If you were to go to a farmer, right, or for that matter, the kirana, the guy who's selling vegetables, right? If you go and say, you know what, I'm become my merchant, he or she will say, yeah, I'm going to become a merchant, which means everything goes into his account, which is good. But then he says, then I have to go and buy a certain goods from the market, open market, and this open market is not accepting QR. You're going to be asking him to withdraw cash. And for which, if he withdraws cash every day, then after 3 or 4 withdrawals, he gets taxed on it, right? Or he gets a fee on it. So I think what's going to be important for greater acceptance is going to be the end-to-end ecosystem coming into the acceptance mode. That is going to be the differentiator for us. To be able to get to say that how does the whole supply chain support this unified view and say that you're going to reduce cash for sure, you're going to make it all digital, and QR is one of the options by which you can pay, and probably is the best option for you to pay. Trust me, everyone will move, because today the outside of the knowledge aspect of the story and the practicality, it is all about the acceptance and for him or her to say that how do they use it for backward to do their purchases. That supply chain is a very key lever to success. And let's not consider just the tier 1 cities or tier 2 cities where the acceptance is there. It's all about the end-to-end supply chain. I think that's going to make the critical difference for us.
Yeah. So you talked about how the government also looks at it from a governance point of view. So it could be an RBI or NPCI play out there. So what is the support needed for the government for accelerating the adoption of the QR code-based payments?
So it's interesting, there has already been some good initiatives which the RBI has recently launched, right? If you start to go into the further tier 3 cities, there is funds that they make available, and obviously it is discretionary. It is not that it is available. So obviously there is quite a bit of I would say moves that have been essentially kicked off. But having said that, I would say the government needs to be, more than the government, it is a central regulator who really needs to mandate certain and facilitate certain deployment capabilities, acceptance, supply chain value. Look at the supply chain acceptance, end-to-end supply chain, and see what can be done to facilitate it. And then not really play into a lot of the MDR story. I would say they should not play into the MDR story, because that's when you're going to get more competition and make it more. The business is going to build on innovation to drive and competition will drive the innovation. So to me, as long as they've pushed towards building the infrastructure, they push towards creating the right settlement regulatory framework, I would say that we're going to be well off. That's the way I look at it. And then that's going to be able to help us bridge it much more faster. So the help that is required is in 3-4 lines is support the interoperability push. Yeah. Provide thrust in terms of extending acceptances as a supply chain value, as an end-to-end supply chain. And more importantly, don't interfere in terms of how the merchant acceptance regulation is there from an MDR perspective. I would say that competition will create the necessary innovation. People will get there, and that will make the game changer. And then is put the right regulations in place from a security perspective and an infrastructure security that is required. Right, that's very important, so that you don't when you start going further deep, you're not exposing the vulnerabilities associated to folks who are dependent on their livelihoods, daily livelihoods. So that's important. So these are areas that the government should really work towards. And once these learnings are implemented, executed well, I would say it will going to help us move faster.
So you are not a great fan of MDR.
I'm a fan of MDR to try. I'm not a great fan of it being controlled effectively, because that's not going to help.
Okay.
So competition will automatically drive the innovation, right? So obviously, if X gives an X percentage, there is Y who's going to say, I'll give you better. So, but better will always come with some form of innovation, right? If he or she does not innovate, he's going to die. Now, that company will not be able to survive. So you have to make sure that you're building the right guardrails for it, but not control the guardrails, because then the speed of the acceleration will decrease. And that's what we have seen. If you see the last 2 years, the offline growth has hugely been depressed. Hugely depressed. And there are some fintech companies which I would say some fantastic amount of innovation that they want to deploy onto the front-end devices. But why will they, when their model has been hit on the head? So give it that space, give the guardrails from a security cover, minimum requirements. And I would say that there are quite a bit of areas that will come in which should help the end consumers and the merchants also.
Yeah. So, okay, it's a debate out there on the MDR. We won't get into that right now. Yeah. So because that will take away its own, there's always something good and there is also something bad. So it's a trade-off. We see how that goes about. I have a next question coming to you from Harish Prabhu. He's a regular out here and he's a very experienced banker. So ask very good questions. Harish, go ahead and mute.
Yeah, hi Mahesh.
Hi Harish.
Hi. See, actually today, if you see, for a person like me or anybody, right, in the cities, and I'm not talking about the villages, right, technically speaking, you don't require a card to conduct your ATM cash withdrawals, because you can have a cardless cash withdrawal. For your POS transactions, you can always do a QR code. And, for e-commerce, obviously you can do it with a QR code or whatever, right? I mean, so then comes the mobility, right? I mean, the personal mobility and the car or mobility. Now, with the FASTag being actually used to not only pay for tolls, it's going to be allowed to be paid for fuel as well as for parking, right? So you don't require a card for that, right? I mean, and finally for the personal mobility, where I can go to metro and whatever. They are also thinking of a QR code. The interim is the National Combined Mobility Card, right? So all these developments wouldn't be, I mean, once they evolve properly, wouldn't it be, the demise of a physical card with anybody?
See, physical card will become virtual. I think we spoke about it last time.
So correct.
So it will get virtual, but but to me, I think, to answer your question, if I were to hear your question, I think, will physical cards exist? They may exist more virtually within your app, right? The apps will get you, there will be a super app which will allow you to probably maintain a lot more different types of cars, different types of your VPAs and everything. But to be able to read through and enable the payment to be initiated, I would say that today, all the acceptances devices are pretty low. I'm saying is, for a country as vast as us, for the whole SME business and for the local retailers, you still have huge pockets which are not yet there, right? Now, how do you enable them? Not everyone will be affording, though at least on the other side, the merchants can't afford a proper, I would say, fancy phone. They will effectively end up just being happy with a feature phone. But to be able to do that entire thing end to end, I would say QR will be there. The backend transaction finalization or completion could happen on the back of a direct to account, or it could be happening to a virtual card. So which is embedded into your, whether it is in your phone or whether it in your account, those things will happen, Harish.
Yeah, thank you.
Will it demise? Will it demise? Yes, eventually. And I would say 5 years from now, one looking ahead, maybe there are opportunities. No, but it is all about what then was going to bring to you is your connectivity. It's about the ability for direct to account to take the volumes. Today, volumes are starting to be seen, but direct to account will have core bankings will start getting 10x more transactions into that system, and they should be ready for it. So those are areas where I would say that over the next 2-3 years, there is going to be significant change on the back end side, not on the front end side.
Okay, thanks, Harish, for your question. Thanks, Mahesh. I think we did talk about it. I think our theme was is the cards demise, on the cards, and we said that it will get converted to virtual. Physical cards may not remain there in your wallet, maybe, or at least it'll reduce. But virtual card is going to be what is the new exciting thing that's coming up very soon. So Mahesh, we had these two big rollouts. Okay. Before I come to the question, I always like to take the participants' question, so I'll hold my question a little later. So Pushpender on YouTube, he asked a question: what is the difference between QR code and barcode? What are their distinguishing factors?
Well, I would say that if I keep it at a broad level and rather not getting into very technology specifications, I think barcode had its single dimensional view of it, right? It was a very simplistic start point for anything that you could automate in your workflow process, right? And get a better data point of it. However, QR gives you a two-dimensional view. It gives you an ability for you to pack more data, depending upon how you look at your error rates and everything. But it gives you more dynamic capabilities which otherwise are not there in the barcode. And when it is two-dimensional, it is also you're able to read it from any direction. Right, your barcode you aren't necessarily forced to read it in a particular way. In QR, you don't. You can read it a bit upside down because there are those guardrails which are there as a part of the whole framework, which allows you to. So to me, more amount of data population, fair amount of, I would say, now today availability of apps or applications to be able to print it, generate it, and better usage of it with a small form factor is probably making the game change for QR over barcode. I'm keeping it at a high level. And obviously security there are more opportunities to do some better security over it.
Yeah. But I think a barcode as this thing is like on the wane, right?
See, it's about the usage. I'm saying if you do non-critical usage for you to track certain efficiencies, you will not spend on QR. You will say barcode is good enough. You have documents which you just need to scan, paste it. You don't need too much of data point around it. You just stick your barcode and move on in life. But if you have far more information that you start to require to capture, you can look at, then QR code makes more sense.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Pushpender, for asking this. I don't know whether it is my friend Pushpender Singh from NPCI, but he just mentioned Pushpender. Anyway, very good question. And I think that distinction between QR code and barcode is important for our audience to understand. I hope participants are able to get a gist of that. So I'll continue with my questions. There were two big initiatives that happened in the West. PayPal Holdings Incorporation rolled out a plan in May to enable QR codes of payments in around 28, 30 markets around the world. In July, Apple also announced a launch of QR code-based payments functionality within their iOS product 14 version. What is making PayPal and Apple, who are like the giant fintechs in the world, into the QR code-based payments? Why are they coming into this?
Well, I think while the business applications of these are many, I would say they're also beginning to see the advantages of generating QR, because it is in the it creates that frictionless capabilities, and it can pack fair amount of information that they want from a decent level of security, from a good level of security. So to them, I think there are emerging trends that they would like to see using this. And today's pandemic situation actually has only accelerated what they otherwise wanted to do down the line. So I would say that there are different reasons for they come in, but simply put, they see the business opportunity to leverage the flexibility associated with the QR and its current standards to be able to pack information, and also probably facilitate its own business model in terms of getting it to the Apple site, getting it to the Apple store, in PayPal's case, in terms of creating more payments transactions and all of them at a frictionless, in the mode of frictionless, which obviously people would love at this point in time.
Yeah, true, absolutely. Thanks. So we have, that could be a reasons why these giant companies like Apple gets into this. So let's look at the growth of QR code based payments, Mahesh. So we know that there is for some reason the Asia and Far East and China, they have been using QR code based payments for various purposes. However, the West is not still there. Okay, and they seem to be still in the card. Why this? Do you see any reasons why we are in this situation?
Well, I would say that the West probably utilized the emergence of QR from a marketing game plan. They used it for a lot more information to be tracked and probably lead the entire opportunities. Having said that, no, most of the West countries are starting to see the emergence, because they see the ease with which the whole process can be established and the customer experience being much better than where they were on the card. So I would say that they are behind, but eventually with a lot of these adoptions by the PayPals of the world or Apples of the world, they're not going to be left behind. They're going to get on. I have already joined the bandwagon and will race through. But yes, I'm saying is they probably have not capitalized on the opportunity initially, and for their population, this thing they were good with the fact that they had a card. They have an opportunity with vis-a-vis the card to be able to drive a lot of the transactions. And since it's credit-based society, a lot of the credit-based opportunities were coming through. But as I said, let's see, 2 years from now, I think things will change. That's my thing. If you look back in terms of where other countries in the East, like you mentioned, folks in the East have completely changed the game plan, right? Because of the population, because of the ease, innovation is starting to come from there. We all know about China's story, but you look at Indonesia, you look at Thailand, you look at some of the card brands like JCB, who are going all out, putting their whole money to the game plan in top 10 countries in Asia. And they're saying that they're going to only promote QR push and pull. So that's the game plan that they're changing, because if they have to beat their competition, what's the next wave? And the pandemic has only helped them ride that wave better.
True. So actually, you're talking about Southeast Asia, and so I have a YouTuber asking a question. He's not mentioned his name. So it says, although QR codes were first invented by a Japanese company, Denso Wave, as he puts it. So Denso Wave is the company which kind of invented the QR codes. Its inception has largely impacted Southeast Asia, and it is said when people say China is painted with QR codes. Is it true? I mean, have you seen this?
Oh yeah, I have not been to China only once, but otherwise, from a perspective of stories that are across the net, you don't need to search too much. You don't need to research. You need to search. You will find enough and more materials of how China has effectively used the infrastructure and the platforms that they've created, whether it's Alipay, Tencent, WeChat, some brilliant amount of use cases, whether it is every person has a QR that he or she can accept money in, and more importantly, what some of the differences that has led to better acceptance is the end-to-end life cycle of being able to use QR for their own livelihood, his or her livelihood. I think that's where the difference is. So today, any country which is able to focus in terms of building the end-to-end infrastructure to support a QR code-based approach in their payment lifecycle will make a success. Then now, if you're just making it front-ending, but the back end is still going to be cash or going to be cards, difficult. It'll be the acceptance is going to be minimal because then it is a forced acceptance rather than a naturally default way of acceptance. That's the way I would put it. So Southeast Asia have gone in far ahead in that game plan. You walk across in some of these states, whether it's Indonesia, whether it is, I would now say, I'm starting to see in Thai. So you're going to see a lot more countries now beginning to shift themselves quickly onto this QR code bandwagon.
Okay, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, like I said earlier, I'm going to wind up this show about 6 minutes earlier because Mahesh has another important engagement. So we have, it's now 3:50. So if you have another 4 to 5 minutes, so if you can put in your questions quickly, I will, get it across to him. The next audio question comes to you directly from Tyag. Tyag, can you please unmute and ask the question? Mahesh, sorry, Tyag. Tyag, are you there? Okay, so while he gets on with his network issues, let me ask a question. We've talked about the resurgence of QR code payments. And like what you said, I'm pretty confident that we will see a lot more use of QR code payment. And that's great. It makes such a lot of public convenience. But Mahesh, what's the downside of all this in terms of governance, in terms of security, and educating the customers? What are the risks that you see?
See, to me, I think for every innovation that comes into play, there are going to be downsides, right? There are going to be someone who gets across and say, you know what, there are some ways to defraud the whole thing or probably play certain spoil sport. So in QR, while it's predominantly still in low value payments, and hence there is only a question where let's talk static. When you talk static QR code, I think the biggest thing is there a possibility for someone to change the QR dimensions that are there on the physical paper? When it is in terms of dynamic, can someone hack the system to be able to provide certain different kind of an QR, which essentially takes you to a very different, which probably gives a credit to a very different account. So there are certain technology, I would say, challenges, but that's far lower than what we would try to estimate today. No, that's far lower. Where increasingly one needs to be very careful about is as India starts to probably proliferate into the tier 3, tier 4, and 5 cities, the essential component would be to be able to enable the users to say how well can they manage themselves with the scanning and not hand it over to someone else. So those are areas where one needs to be a bit careful about education, educate the consumers about it. Once that is happening, I think I would say it's far more better.
Okay, cool.
But it's far more simpler than what we have seen in a physical card, because everyone carries a mobile. But then if you're going to have a mobile device, which is far more cheaper, which is enabling you to read with the cameras and everything, Android and everything, I think you're starting to see some positivity.
Yeah. So Mahesh, I read, while I was doing a little bit of research on this one, I read that there is this college in Andhra Pradesh called PB Siddhartha College of Arts and Science. And so what they have done a very innovative thing. They have put the QR codes on trees in the campus of the college to educate their students about their botanical names and medicinal value. I thought that's a fantastic use of QR codes other than payments. And it opens up a whole lot of other areas where this can be used. Don't you think, Mahesh?
Oh yeah, means QR, where you have a lot of information to be provided. I would say that lots of information, and you need the quite dynamic nature of that information. QR code is the best because you could automatically lead a user who's interested to probably lead him or her into a site which probably gives fantastic knowledge, and also it gives you insights. So which means that at the end of the day, if you ask me, QR code, you're talking of a great example, but you name it, in your in your life, daily walks of your life, you have a lot of instances where QR code will make it much more successful in terms of providing the information. Just look at it, uh, for a young kid or someone who's walking into a particular, as you rightly said, into a store, he walks into bookstore. He just says, she can do a top read on the QR and say, you know what, I'm going to get a summary of the books. I'm going to read it on the mobile, and then I'm going to go and make it work. I'm going to pick he or she. Now, I'm obviously a physical book reader, not much an e-book reader, but any QR, if I could read it and say my top 5 books or this as I don't need reams of information. I can pick and choose the book I need and then get some synopsis associated with it. So that's fantastic. Usage could be many.
Yeah. Talking of which, we all are proliferant users of WhatsApp. They were also going to come out with some QR code-based payment. Do you have any idea what's the status there?
I think it is still in the works. The last I heard was it is predominantly still towards the back end of its acceptances. So what I heard in public knowledge is that they are possibly getting into the final certifications and getting certain things done. If that happens, well, watch out. There is going to be one more game changer coming your way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we all are on WhatsApp, every one of us, 100%. All the audiences, participants are watching are on WhatsApp. And in WhatsApp, if you're able to get a barcode usage, that's going to be it's going to be a game changer. I don't want to hold you back, Mahesh. There could be other questions coming. I'm sorry, participants. We value the request of the guest. He wants to leave. And I want to thank you, Mahesh, for coming over, spending your time with us. It was wonderful talking to you on a new subject on QR codes. Have a great day ahead of you. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, KK. Really appreciate the opportunity. Great. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, bid you also goodbye, and see you tomorrow for the next edition of the Business and Banking Dialogue. Thank you very much. All of you have a great evening. Thank you.